kind of like just trying to decide which identity do you want to push forward, right? Do you want to push the ArtsHab identity and create an identity for the people within them? Or do you want to just push the artists that live in this building that happens to be called ArtsHab? I think the emphasis, Ryan, I think it's on something here, because it's about legacy too. You also want to be able to leave this place and have ArtsHab as an identity, as a place where interesting artists in Edmonton or wherever are working in. You want to make ArtsHab the emphasis, I think.
We're more trying to establish an identity, are we not, rather than say a gallery, right? So we have how many people in the building, right? What happens if we just take it elsewhere and have group showings other places rather than just here? Because I think that's our biggest thing holding us back, is that we actually want to have it here.
The longer I live in this area, the more people I meet on a regular basis who know of this building, but they can't figure out what the word ArtsHab on the building means. Anywhere I go, like if I go to a restaurant and somebody finds out I live in ArtsHab, it's the same thing. What is it? What's the deal over there?
Originally, I was looking for another studio to replace the studio that I was eventually not going to be able to afford. The Great West Saddlery building was currently trying to negotiate a lease to try to see if Latitude could get the floors again for a cheaper price. It didn't work out, so Latitude gave up the spaces. If I didn't move, I'd be left without a studio, so I found out that this place was looking for somebody via Ree, who knew Tim Reckner at the time. Shortly after, I found out that Greg Swain was here and I had recognized him from Snap. And then Jeff Collins had approached me before at one of my openings. We were just talking about artwork in general, but he seemed like a very cool guy. And so, yeah, I just applied.
Back in 2001, I'd been living in Edmonton for roughly about a year. My brother had invited me to come out and stay with him. When a couple of grants managed to come through in relation to a project that I'd started a while earlier, and for a while had a place set up on the west end of town. The problem with that is not long after that, within a few months, I also managed to land a job working for the National Film Board. So basically I was in a position where I had to change my arrangement because I was living on the west end in Collingwood, working in the industrial area, which was a fair ways away from where I was living, and on top of that having to travel all the way downtown every day to work at the film board. And basically how it got started was I just basically got on the phone and started calling people based on advertisements, essentially that I found in probably either View or C Magazine or both. Essentially one thing led to another, and I ended up talking to the then president of the Art Scoop organization, who basically listened to my needs intently and said, you know, why don't you come on down and check the place out? So I did. Beyond that, entering one of the spaces, you know, definitely, this is it, this is where I want to live.
I was looking for a place to live at the time, and I guess searching for sort of some form of an artist community. I didn't know much about it, but I was sort of curious about the idea, and yeah, I had never heard of it before.
Well, I guess I was at a time in my life where I needed a change and a stage in my career where I thought it would be very beneficial to be mixed in with a bunch of other artists. And I thought that it would be good for me health-wise, psychologically-wise, as well as career-wise.
It was cosmic. Yes, it was totally in the planets. I needed a place to live, and on a particular day that was rather important, I quite literally just got in my car and drove and found myself outside here, walked upstairs and was told that you guys had a space and I should really apply, so I did. So what brought me here was a need to move to a space, an art-loving space, and a place to sleep and do my work. But then a close second was knowing that there were other artists in very different disciplines that I could feed off of. I had friends who were in the first wave of ArtsHab. I had been in the spaces before and knew that they were ideal for the kind of work that I wanted to do over the next 2 years.
I was just looking for a place to work, and I ran into Aaron Peterson, and he told me by chance that there was an opening. Actually, I ran into Gabby Rosende first. She told me about this place, and I stopped by a couple times, but I never thought I would ever live here.
Well, when I got out of school, I was looking for studio space. There was an ad in View Magazine, I believe it was. I called, and I actually got somebody's house number. So I actually inquired with View to find what the real phone number was. And they were shocked because they haven't heard any phone calls for like weeks. So they basically just gave it to me because I was the only person that applied. And I know what the interview process is like here. And I don't necessarily shoot art, photography, you know, I'm doing a lot more commercial and fashion, so I think at the time they probably wouldn't have let me in. So actually it was a fluke that I got in here, really.
But originally it was just for inexpensive studio space to start our photo studio, and then we just grew into the ArtsHab family, if you will. But that just happened as soon as we moved in. Once we realized he was here, then we just got involved.
When I moved in here, it was perfect, and it made my life in Edmonton work really well. I was looking for a studio space, and I'd been working out of a semi-classroom at the Faculty of Education at the University of Alberta, where I was teaching part-time. That wasn't really conducive space, and ran into Lynn Malin. Turned out she was sharing a space with two other artists, Arlene Wessalincha, who's still here, and Gloria Mock, who's an artist and a medical doctor. They had studio space downtown, which was being, like we all know, it was being renovated for condos, so they managed to be part of the space. Looking for somebody to sublet, so I moved in.
I had a studio for a long time downtown on 107th Street, and Gene Dubb bought the building, and he was going to convert it into condos. But I'd been there for a long time, and I loved being downtown. When my first studio went, I was frantic, and I was without a studio for about 6 months, and it was very disturbing and very difficult. So I was looking for a space downtown, and luckily heard about ArtsHab, that they were thinking of something. So and I got involved with Karen Ball, and we talked, and we sort of decided how big the space should be, how much we could afford as 3 or 4 people coming in here, what we needed. When it first opened, we were the first people in this space. Arlene and I were. The other person that was here before was Gloria Mock. And when she moved out, Harold moved in.
Lynn Malin and myself have been here for the 8 years. Elizabeth Beauchamp was working with Lynn on some collaborative work, and they had a totally bare design company. Betty moved out, and Lynn and I just split that space. And Gloria Mock was originally with us, and she at first sublet to Harold when he moved to Edmonton from Halifax, and then when our lease came due after 5 years, Harold signed on. It's actually the group of artists that in this studio here, when before they even had started building it, when they were talking about ArtsHab, we all had separate studios in the studio center building. And so when we knew that we were going to have to leave there, we sort of approached Karen Ball at the time, was organizing things, and said, what's the scenario and what's going to be the layout? And so we sort of got in at the beginning, because initially they were going to make a bunch of small studios in this large space. And we said, well, if 4 of us will sign a long-term lease to have the whole space open and empty, and we would just configure it how we wanted it. Probably if you took all our 4 studios over at the Studio Center building, we had double the size of what we have here. So we needed to be more efficient, so it was advantageous for them to have somebody that we signed a 5-year lease initially, committed to being here long-term.
Well, Ophelia, my partner, actually saw an advertisement for the place. I didn't know much about it up until that point. That was the summer of 2002, and then she encouraged me to put a portfolio together, and I applied. What interested me was the possibility of being part of an artist community. The photography work that I've done for the most part has been a fairly solitary exercise. Not solitary in the sense that I do it by myself, because I take pictures of people, but I've never necessarily been part of a community of other artists. It was intriguing to me. Yeah, I thought it could help me with my own art and sort of give me a context which I didn't have.
I don't remember exactly where I saw it, but I think I saw an ad or the paper. So I thought, oh, that's really neat. And it was about a community of artists living together and maybe getting inspired by one another. But in terms of how it was done and what it would entail, we didn't know that, and I didn't know that. But I do remember sort of prepping for the interview where you meet all the tenants, and thinking, okay, well, how could I contribute to the community and stuff?